I lost respect for my so after a disgusting prank at work crossed a line. My husband came home from work laughing, and I knew before he finished the sentence that something had changed. Not in him, in what I was willing to see. He told me the story the way people tell stories they're proud of. Animated, leaning forward, doing the voices. A coworker nobody liked had left something behind. Someone offered to drop it off. My husband suggested they dunk it in the work bathroom first, just as a joke. The other guy actually did it, handed it back without saying anything, and wasn't that hilarious? I sat across from him and watched his face while he laughed. I thought about a word my mother used to use, character. I'd say, that's what character looks like, or watch how someone treats a person they don't have to be kind to. That's their character. I'd grown up with that word meaning something specific, a weight to it. I said, that's not funny. He said, you had to be there. I said, someone ate that. He said the guy was a jerk. Everyone hated him. It was sealed, so technically nothing got in, and I needed to lighten up. I have been with this man for 11 years. I have watched him be patient in traffic and kind to strangers and gentle with our children in ways that made me certain I'd chosen correctly. Those things are still true. I know they're still true. That's the part that makes the other part so disorienting. The coexistence of the man I know and the man who came home proud of contaminating someone's food. I explained carefully why it wasn't funny. The risk to his job. The fact that we had children who depended on his income. The fact that it didn't matter whether the coworker was liked or unliked. Is that ethics aren't conditional on popularity. He listened. He said I was right. He said he understood. 4 hours later, he sent a written message to a coworker about wanting to knock the same person's teeth out. He forwarded it to me by accident. I sat in the kitchen and read it twice and understood that the conversation we'd had hadn't registered as serious. It had registered as something to wait out until I was done. I made a list that night after he was asleep. Not a dramatic list, a practical one. What I had, what I needed, what the gap between them looked like, and how long it would take to close it. I am a stay-at-home mother. This was a choice we made together when our first was born, and I don't regret the years of it. The particular privilege of being present for all of it. But choice and trap can look identical from the outside, and I was starting to understand how quickly one becomes the other. When I confronted him with the message, he had a list of his own. The guy who actually did it had a mental disability and took the joke too seriously. The boss talked that way all the time. The coworker was allegedly a drug user anyway. He'd been off the clock for part of it. Everyone else was suggesting things too. I sat across from my husband of 11 years and listened to him explain why none of it was really his fault, and I thought about character. The weight of it. I said, none of that changes what happened. He said I was making this into something it wasn't. I said, you are the only income our family has. Our children need that to be safe. You risked it because a person you don't like is a person you don't like. He said the guy would never find out. I said, that's not the point I'm making. He said I was being dramatic. That word, dramatic. I have noticed over the past 8 months since he started this job how often that word comes out. When I mentioned the jokes getting crueler. When I said the way he talked about certain coworkers made me uncomfortable. When I asked if he was okay because the person describing his workplace sounded nothing like the person who'd lived in this house for 11 years. Dramatic. Lightening up required. I told him this was divorce-worthy behavior. I said it plainly, the way you say a thing you've decided. He looked at me differently then. Not frightened, exactly. More like recalculating. He said I was serious. I said I was serious. He said people make mistakes. I said this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is a thing that happens once without intention. And this was a suggestion, then an execution, then pride, then doubling down, then a written threat, then 5 excuses that added up to everyone else's fault. He didn't have anything to say to that. I am still in this house. My children are still in their beds, and I will not move them into instability to make a point. I have started looking at what jobs exist for someone whose resume has an 11-year gap, and I have been making calls, and I have been doing math, and the math is getting more possible every week. The coworker whose food was contaminated doesn't know it happened. When I'm able to, I plan to tell them. Not for drama. Because someone made a choice that affected them, and they deserve to know. Choices have weight. Character is what you do when there are no consequences. I know what I saw. I'm just waiting until I can afford to act on it.